In May of 2024, Red Lobster filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. More than 100 locations closed. A 56-year-old American institution, the chain that basically invented casual seafood dining in this country, was circling the drain. A year later, under a 36-year-old CEO nobody outside the restaurant industry had heard of, Red Lobster sales were up 40%. The company was out of bankruptcy, and it was projecting its first profitable year since the crisis began. He's calling it, in his own words, the greatest comeback in the history of the restaurant industry. This is a story of Damola Adamolekun, Red Lobster, and how you rescue a company by remembering exactly who loves it. Red Lobster opened its first location in Lakeland, Florida in 1968, founded by Bill Darden. From the very start, it did something that wasn't guaranteed in the American South of '68. Founder Bill Darden made the decision to serve all customers, regardless of race, even in places where segregation was still the local norm. And other business owners around him were still resisting integration. That decision shaped the brand for decades. Red Lobster became, by a wide margin, one of the most successful relationships between a mainstream casual dining chain and Black America of any restaurant company in the country. By 2015, roughly 1 in 6 Red Lobster diners was Black, a higher share than any other casual dining chain in the country. The chain became something close to a rite of passage. Birthdays, graduations, first dates, celebrations of all kinds, generation after generation. It became a launch pad for Black restaurant managers and culinary talent, many coming through historically Black colleges and universities, building careers inside a company that had welcomed them from day one. It got a huge shout out in one of the biggest songs of the last decade when Beyonce name-checked it in Formation in 2016. Red Lobster wasn't just a seafood chain. For a huge and devoted part of its customer base, it was a cultural institution woven into family history in a way almost no other national restaurant brand can claim. By the 2000s, Red Lobster had grown into one of the largest casual dining chains in America, with hundreds of locations spread across the country under the ownership of Darden Restaurants. That's the same parent company behind Olive Garden. On paper, it looks stable, mature, and entirely safe. Here's how it almost got destroyed. For most of its history, Red Lobster operated as part of the Darden Restaurants, the same parent company behind Olive Garden, like I said. In 2014, it was spun off and sold to Golden Gate Capital, a private equity firm, in a deal that included something called a sale leaseback. Golden Gate sold off the real estate under Red Lobster's own restaurants and had the company lease it back. That single transaction stripped Red Lobster of the actual physical assets it operated on, turning fixed real estate into a recurring rent obligation the company would carry for the next decade, regardless of how the restaurants themselves were actually performing. From there, instability became the pattern. Red Lobster cycled through 5 different CEOs in 5 years, a level of turnover that makes any coherent long-term strategy almost impossible, since each new leader typically arrives with a different diagnosis and a different fix. And in 2023, in an attempt to drive traffic, leadership took endless shrimp for years, a popular limited promotional event, and made it a permanent everyday menu offering. It was popular to customers. It was catastrophic for the business. The math behind an all-you-can-eat shrimp deal simply didn't work at everyday pricing. Once it stopped being scarce and started being expected. And the promotion reportedly cost the company around $11 million in a single quarter. Combined with over $1 billion in accumulated debt, much of it tied back to the original real estate deal. Red Lobster's finances buckled. In May of 2024, the company filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy and closed more than 100 performing locations, shrinking from roughly 650 restaurants down to around 545. Ownership passed to the company's lenders, led by an investment group called Fortress Investment Group. Fortress needed someone to actually run the thing, and in August 2024, they found him. Damola Adamolekun was on paper an unusual choice to rescue a seafood chain. Nigerian American, a Harvard Business School graduate, he started his career in a high-stakes finance at Goldman Sachs and the private equity firm TPG Capital. The kind of background built entirely around analyzing distressed companies from the outside, not running restaurants from the inside. Then, at 31 years old, he made the jump from deal maker to operator, taking over as CEO of P.F. Chang's. He guided that chain through the chaos of COVID-era shutdowns, restructured its operations, and got it back to consistent profitability. Under his leadership, P.F. Chang's grew to generate roughly $1 billion a year in revenue. That track record is exactly why Fortress brought him in to advise on the Red Lobster acquisition in the first place, and exactly why they made him CEO once the deal was closed. Before he officially took the job, Adamolekun did something quite revealing. He visited a number of Red Lobster locations in disguise, unannounced, just to watch how the restaurants actually ran day to day. What he found surprised him. It's very easy for staff to disengage and check out, he said, but they hadn't. Some employees had been there for 10, 20, even 40 years. There was real loyalty inside the building. What the company lacked, he concluded, wasn't heart, it was direction, what he called a North Star. His operating philosophy was shaped directly by his finance background. In a distressed situation, he said, you cannot afford to spend months figuring out what to do. Speed and decisiveness mattered more than perfect information. So he moved fast on two fronts at once. First was the menu and the experience. Red Lobster had cut its costs in ways that alienated its most loyal customers, dropping fan favorite items like hush puppies and popcorn shrimp along the way. Adamolekun brought them back almost immediately. He introduced new items too, including an interactive seafood boil bag brought to the table steaming and customizable for spice level. It sold so well the company briefly ran out of product. Our sales were up 80% for the week that we introduced them, Adamolekun said. The second move was bigger and riskier, leaning directly, publicly, and explicitly into Red Lobster's relationship with Black America. The relationship that had quietly been one of the brand's biggest assets the entire time, and that nobody in leadership had treated as a strategy. Adamolekun went on Good Morning America. He sat down for an interview with The Breakfast Club, the nationally syndicated hip-hop radio show, talking openly about the brand's history and his bond with Black diners. According to Red Lobster's own chief marketing officer, sales started climbing almost immediately after that interview aired. The company sponsored HBCU marching band competitions. It partnered with WNBA star Angel Reese and the Chicago Sky. It made Adamolekun himself the face of a new ad campaign. Not a seafood platter, not a mascot, but the CEO sitting at a desk talking straight to camera about what was actually changing inside the company. By 2025, the results were showing up in the numbers. The company reported that yield sales were 40% higher than a year before. Red Lobster was fully out of bankruptcy, and the company began projecting positive net income by fiscal 2026, its first profitable year since the crisis nearly ended it. Adamolekun didn't stop at food and marketing. He also made himself unusually visible for a casual dining CEO, appearing on podcasts and magazine profiles and across social media, turning his own age and outsider background into part of the story rather than hiding it. Red Lobster leaned into pop culture partnerships that felt like a media company's playbook than a seafood chain's. Rapper Ice Cube, retired NBA star Blake Griffin dunking his way into a butter joke for a lobster fest, NSYNC's Joey Fatone playing up 1990s nostalgia to promote a value deal. The company launched Cheddar Bay merchandise around its famous biscuits, introduced a happy hour, and kept a close eye on social sentiment data to guide menu and marketing decisions in something close to real time. Adamolekun has since said he wants Red Lobster to become, in his own words, the most AI-forward restaurant company that exists, using technology to sharpen everything from a customer's feedback analysis to delivery operations as more of the chain's businesses shift towards off-premise orders. By mid-2026, Adamolekun described the business as growing mid-size, single digits to low double digits on certain weeks. Solid, unspectacular, sustainable growth. A long way from the emergency triage of 2024, but short by his own account, and fully reclaiming where the brand once stood. That combination of confidence and candor has become part of his signature. Unlike most corporate turnarounds, this one has been narrated in public, in something close to real time, by the person actually doing it. So what's the blueprint here? Especially for founders who tend to hear turnaround stories like this and assume the lesson is about a bold new idea. It isn't. Adamolekun didn't invent a new restaurant concept. He didn't reinvent seafood or discover some untapped customer segment nobody had noticed before. What he did was look at an asset that already existed, a genuine, decades deep emotional relationship between a specific brand and a specific loyal community, and treat it as the core strategy instead of background noise. Red Lobster leadership had access to that same relationship for years through 5 different CEOs and private equity ownership period. They focused mainly on real estate and cost extraction. Nobody before Adamolekun had built the turnaround around it on purpose. That's the difference between a great operator and a great founder. It's worth being precise about, because the two roles get confused constantly in how people talk about business success. A founder's job is to usually invent something that didn't exist. An operator's job, especially in turnaround, is to correctly diagnose what already works, protect it at almost any cost, and ruthlessly fix or remove everything else in its way. Adamalekun's finance background, years spent professionally assessing distressed companies from the outside at Goldman Sachs and TPG, is exactly what helped him separate Red Lobster's real problem from its real asset. The problem was a broken cost structure, stripped balance sheet, and a leadership team that had lost any sense of direction. The real asset was a customer relationship that survived 5 CEOs, a private equity real estate deal, and bankruptcy filing without ever actually disappearing. But there's a second lesson here, and it's speed. Adamolekun has said directly that a distressed situation doesn't give you the luxury of spending months figuring out the right move. He visited restaurants undercover before he even had the job, made the menu decisions to bring back fan favorites almost immediately, and had an ad campaign with himself as the face of the company, running within months of taking over. In a healthy business, you can afford to deliberate. In a genuinely distressed one, the cost of a slow, well-considered plan can exceed the cost of a fast, good enough one, because the company may not survive long enough for the well-considered plan to actually matter. If you're running a company right now, distressed or not, here's a question worth asking yourself honestly. What's the thing your most loyal customers already love about you? What's the thing that leadership has been too distracted, too under-resourced, or too focused on the wrong metrics to actually build a strategy around? That's usually not a hidden secret buried somewhere in a market research report. It's usually sitting in plain sight the same way it was at Red Lobster the entire time, in the form of 30 or even 40-year employees who never stopped caring, and a community of loyal diners who never actually left. So if you want more stories like this, companies that nearly died, specific decisions that saved them, make sure you subscribe. Let me know in the comments which comeback you want me to cover next.